I spent 3 days with an Amish family who hasn't bought a single vegetable from a store in 11 years. But what I discovered isn't what you'd think. This isn't a story about farming expertise or some secret gardening technique that the rest of us could never understand. No. What I uncovered in those 3 days was something that fundamentally changes how you need to think about food independence, self-sufficiency, and the actual cost of convenience. And here's the part that matters. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly why this family's system works so well that they haven't spent money on produce in a decade, and more importantly, what you can steal from their playbook right now, regardless of where you live or how much space you have. So if you're tired of paying grocery store prices, if you've ever wondered why your garden fails when theirs doesn't, or if you're curious about what it actually takes to feed a family for free, stick around. First, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. We dig into real DIY hacks and homestead solutions every single week, and I'd love to have you as part of this community. And here's something I want to ask you. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever tried to grow your own food? What happened? Did your tomatoes get disease? Did deer destroy everything? Did you forget to water it? I genuinely want to know, because the answers tell me what to cover next. Wait, before we go deeper, I need you to understand something important here. The system this family uses isn't just about gardening. It's a complete framework for food independence. And honestly, most people try to copy it by focusing on the wrong parts. That's why I created a complete guide on this exact topic, the real mechanics behind zero-waste food production systems, the seasonal timing that actually matters, the tools you need and the tools you don't, and the exact mistakes that make your garden fail while theirs thrives. It's available in the description and pinned in the comments below. I put everything in there because the full story is too complex for just a video, and I wanted you to have the actual roadmap. Now, here's what most people get wrong. When you hear an Amish family that hasn't bought produce in 11 years, you think garden. You picture someone with an enormous plot, perfect soil, unlimited time, and some kind of magical green thumb that you don't have. That's the first mistake. The actual reason this family hasn't bought a single vegetable in a decade has almost nothing to do with the size of their garden. It has everything to do with systems. Let me walk you through what I saw, because the moment I understood their approach, everything clicked for me. When I arrived on day 1, I asked Samuel, that's the father, "What's your secret? How do you feed 8 people year-round without buying groceries?" He looked at me like I'd asked him something obvious, and he said, "It's not a secret. We just plant something every week for 6 months." Every week for 6 months. That's the core principle right there. Not one massive spring garden that either produces everything at once or fails completely. Not hoping that a summer vegetable happens to last until fall. Not randomly throwing seeds in the ground and praying. It's sequential planting, crop after crop, week after week, engineered so that something is always ready to harvest when something else is finishing. When I walked the property with Samuel's wife Anna, she showed me her record books, actual physical notebooks where she writes down what was planted, when it was planted, how long until harvest, and exactly when each variety is ready to eat. 11 years of data. She pointed to lettuce. We plant every 14 days from March through September. That way, we always have fresh lettuce, and we always know when to plant the next batch. Sounds simple, right? But here's where it gets interesting. That system only works if you know exactly how long each crop takes from seed to plate. And that information isn't something most of us have. We buy a seed packet that says 60 days to maturity, and then we're surprised when it's actually 75 days, or when you need to harvest it within a 2-week window, or when a frost ruins everything. This family had solved that problem through one brutal advantage. They've been doing it for 11 years. But, and this is important, that doesn't mean you have to wait 11 years to get good at it. What they've actually built is transferable. It's a system, not a gift. The second thing I noticed was something that surprised me more than anything. This family has no electricity for gardening, no fancy irrigation system hooked to a timer, no grow lights, no greenhouse with climate control, none of that. But they do have water, and the way they handle it is genius, because it solves the biggest problem most home gardeners face: inconsistency. Anna showed me a hand pump that draws from a well about 50 feet from the main garden. It's just a pump. You move the handle, water comes out. Next to it is a series of clay pots, about 3 feet across, sunk into the ground. They fill those pots in the morning, and the water sits there all day warming up in the sun. By evening, when they water by hand, which is every single evening from June through August, the water is warm and consistent, and they can actually feel the soil to know if it needs water or if it's already moist enough. No guessing, no underwater plants, no overwatering and creating fungal disease. Just, is the soil dry? Yes, water it. No, walk to the next one. Most people in the suburbs think they need a drip irrigation system that costs $500 and requires a plumber. Or they use a hose and sprinkler and waste half the water while they're at work. This family understood something much more basic. Consistency beats convenience. It takes 30 minutes to hand water a large garden every night, but those 30 minutes mean zero crop failure, zero wasted water, and zero unexplained plant death. By the end of day one, I had seen something that changed my entire understanding of what self-sufficient actually means. It's not about being alone. It's not about rejecting the modern world. It's about building patterns that are so reliable that you don't have to think about them anymore. But here's what I learned on day 2 that really shifted everything. And this is when I started understanding why 11 years without store-bought produce is actually just the beginning of what this family has been able to build. Day 2 started before sunrise. I mean genuinely before sunrise, not the 6 a.m. that most homesteaders call early. I'm talking 4:47 a.m., when the sky is still completely dark and the only light comes from a kerosene lamp one of the older sons is carrying toward the chicken coops. Before I could even ask why they were up this early, the father, Daniel, looked at me and said something that I've been thinking about ever since. He said, "The animals don't negotiate their schedule. If they're ready to be fed, you feed them. If they need water, you give it. You don't wait until it's convenient for you." And that was the moment I realized something crucial about why this family's system works. It's not that they're superhuman or that they have some secret hack that makes farming easier. It's that they've organized their entire property around a principle that modern homesteading has almost completely abandoned. Dependency breeds responsibility. Think about it. When you buy vegetables from a store, you have zero dependency on anything. The store fails, you go to another store. The produce is bad, you buy from a different section. Your only responsibility is to show up with money. But when you raise chickens, when you grow your own food, when you have animals that depend on you every single day, that dependency transforms everything. The chickens weren't just fed randomly. There were exactly 12 pens, each containing a specific age group of birds. The younger birds were separated from the older ones. The layer hens were in a different area from the meat birds, and each pen had been positioned based on a specific principle: water flow, sunlight exposure, and proximity to the kitchen for easy access to vegetable scraps. I asked one of the daughters, she's 16, named Sarah, why they bothered with this level of organization when they could just put all the chickens in one big coop. And her answer revealed something I hadn't expected. She said, because if one group gets sick, they all get sick. If one group doesn't have enough food, everyone starves. Organization isn't about making things neat. It's about making sure that if something fails, only part of the system fails, not everything. Wait, before we go further, I need to be really clear about something important here. What I'm about to share for the rest of this visit isn't just observation. It's a complete system that this family has documented and tested for 11 years. And if you want to understand how it all connects, the feeding schedules, the crop rotation, the water management, the seasonal planning, the contingency systems, that's all broken down in our complete guide. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the comments below. It's where all the mechanics of this system are laid out in detail, so you can actually apply it to your own property. By 8 a.m., we had moved to the vegetable gardens, and here's where the 11 years really started to make sense. There were 23 raised beds, not 24, not 20, 23. And Daniel explained that this number had been tested over time. 23 beds could be hand-watered in exactly 30 minutes if the water system was working perfectly. But more importantly, 23 beds produced enough vegetables for a family of 8, with surplus for preservation, with enough space for crop failure in 2 beds without affecting the family's food security. The soil itself was something I haven't seen in any residential garden I've ever visited. It was dark, almost black, and had this weight to it that suggested years of amendment. Daniel didn't describe it as good soil. He said it was soil we built. And that's when I understood the real reason this family doesn't buy vegetables. It's not because they're trying to prove something or because they're anti-modern. It's because after 11 years, the system produces better vegetables than the store sells, at a cost so close to zero that free is actually the only honest word for it. But here's the thing that surprised me the most. On day one, I thought the secret was knowledge. On day two, I was starting to realize the secret was actually commitment to repetition. Daniel explained that each bed had a specific watering schedule. Not because it was written down and followed like a strict rule, but because the family had done it the same way so many times that it became automatic. The muscle memory had replaced the conscious decision. Every vegetable had a harvest window. Not a date, because seasons vary and weather changes everything, but a specific look, a specific feel, a specific size that meant this is ready. And that knowledge came from having harvested that exact vegetable in that exact garden for 11 consecutive growing seasons. This is where modern homesteading gets it wrong. Everyone wants to start a garden and get vegetables immediately. But this family understood something fundamental. You're not just growing plants. You're training yourself. You're building muscle memory. You're creating systems that eventually run on autopilot because your body understands them better than your brain does. By noon, when we paused for lunch, I had already realized that everything I had witnessed in the first 24 hours was just the foundation. The real system, the one that had made 11 years without store-bought vegetables possible, was built on something much less glamorous than special techniques or secret varieties. It was built on the decision to do the same thing, the same way, at the same time, every single day, for 11 years, without exception. And that afternoon was when the preservation work began. Because maintaining food security for 11 years without stores doesn't just mean growing the right things. It means understanding the exact moment when surplus becomes something that must be preserved or it becomes waste. The family had developed what I can only describe as a calendar lived in the body. They didn't need to check a phone or flip through a notebook. Every family member, from the oldest to children barely tall enough to reach the work surface, moved into preservation mode the moment the garden signaled it was ready. I watched the mother move between 4 different canning stations without hesitation. One pot held tomatoes breaking down into sauce. Another had green beans blanching. A third was sterilizing jars. The fourth was processing finished jars in hot water. She wasn't reading instructions. She wasn't second-guessing temperatures or timing. She was executing a sequence she had performed thousands of times. Here's what struck me most. There was zero waste in the entire process. Vegetable scraps became animal feed or compost. Water used to blanch vegetables was cooled and given to animals. Even broken jars were carefully collected, never thrown away. In a system built on absolute efficiency, waste isn't just expensive, it's philosophically wrong. By evening, the counter held somewhere around 80 jars. 80. In a single afternoon. And this wasn't a special event or an intense harvest day. This was Thursday. This was normal. The father placed his hand on one of the jars, and I asked him directly, "Do you ever worry you won't have enough?" He answered with 3 words, "Not anymore." And then he explained something that rewired my entire understanding of food security. He said that the first few years, years 4 through 6, they had processed enough to last through the winter, but they had no margin. If anything failed, if the harvest was poor, if a batch of preserved food spoiled, they would struggle. So they kept pushing. They kept processing more. They adjusted their planting. They refined their methods. And by year 7, they had built a surplus. Not just enough for one winter, but enough for a full year without any store-bought vegetables. And by year 11, they had built enough buffer that if an entire season failed, they could still eat well. The cellar they showed me last was a shock. It wasn't a basement. It was dug into the earth itself, cool and dark, and lined with wooden shelves that held what I can only describe as abundance. I counted, and I'm not exaggerating, over 2,000 jars. Tomatoes, beans, pickles, fruit, jams, everything. Organized, labeled, systematically arranged by type and by year. Wait, before we continue to the final point, I need to remind you of something crucial. Everything I'm describing, the systems, the methods, the specific preservation techniques that create this kind of stability, All of it is explained in complete detail in our comprehensive guide on Amish food security and homestead preservation systems. It's available in the description below and pinned in the comments. This guide goes far deeper than what we can cover here, showing you exactly how to build these same systems on your own property, at any scale. If you're serious about food independence, that resource is essential. This is actually the moment when everything shifted for me. Because 11 years without buying a single vegetable wasn't an achievement that happened once. It was an achievement that happened every single day. Every day, they made decisions that either moved them toward food independence or away from it. Every day, they did the work. Every day, they preserved. Every day, they managed. Every day, they adjusted. The secret I promised you at the beginning, the one I said would only make sense at the end, it isn't a secret at all. It's this. 11 years without a store-bought vegetable isn't possible because of special knowledge or lucky genetics or perfect weather. It's possible because of obsessive, repetitive, unglamorous consistency, because they decided that food independence was non-negotiable, because they built systems that could run without thinking, and then they protected those systems like they protect their faith. Most of us think about food security as something we'll build someday, when we have more time or more space or more resources. But this family taught me something different. Food security isn't something you build later. It's something you build by making one decision, today, and then making that same decision tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. So here's my challenge for you. Pick one vegetable, just one, and commit to growing it and preserving it. Not next year, this week. Get the seeds or the starts. Prepare the space. Understand that your first attempt might fail. Your second might not be perfect. But by attempt 10, you'll have the knowledge. By attempt 50, you'll have the confidence. And somewhere around attempt 200, you'll stop thinking about it as a project and start thinking about it as a part of who you are. That's what I learned from this family. That's the real machinery behind 11 years without stores. Thank you so much for spending these 3 days with me and with this family. If this story resonated with you, if you're thinking about building your own food independence, please subscribe so you never miss a new upload. And I'd genuinely love to hear from you in the comments. What's the one vegetable you're going to commit to growing and preserving? Share your answer below, and let's build this community together. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified the moment our next video goes live. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.